of building a safer, healthier, and more equitable Hennepin County. Non-public safety traffic stops harm our community, in particular our Black and Brown community members, and they do not work to protect public safety. Let me be clear. We want the police to spend their time and resources addressing dangerous driving. Speeding, distracted driving, driving under the influence, and blowing through stop signs and lights threatens public safety and takes lives. We will continue to prosecute felony cases resulting from dangerous driving behavior. Under our new policy, which will go into effect October 15th of this year, we will presumptively not charge cases that arise from a non-public safety traffic stop. I don't want there to be any confusion about what a non-public safety traffic stop is, so I'm going to list them for you. Failure to display registration tabs or driving with expired registration tabs. Failure to illuminate license plate, rim or frame obscuring license plate except for the plate letters and numbers. Driving with only one functioning and visible headlight, brake light, or tail light. Driving with only one functional side view mirror present. Driving without a rear view mirror, with the rear view mirror obstructed or with an item dangling from the rear view mirror. Driving without working windshield wipers. Failure to signal a lane change or turn unless the driver is operating the vehicle in an unsafe manner or creating an imminent safety hazard. Cracked windshield unless it substantially obscures the driver's view. Window tint that does not comply with Minnesota law unless it creates an imminent hazard to safety. These minor moving and equipment violations are sometimes used as a pretext to stop drivers and search their vehicles. This is why they are often referred to as pretext stops. This policy is grounded in research and best practices that clearly demonstrate these stops deeply undermine community trust, which has a significant negative impact on law enforcement's ability to investigate crime and our ability to prosecute cases. That reason alone would be enough to implement this policy. But in addition, these stops just don't work. The data is clear and consistent across the country. The rate at which these stops fail to recover contraband is stunning. Study after study has shown a failure rate of 99%. According to MPD data on equipment and moving violations from 2017 and 2018, a gun was recovered in less than half of 1% of the stops. That is a failure rate of 99.5%. Why would we spend limited time and money on a tactic that fails 99 times out of 100? It is an enormous waste of resources and comes at a devastating cost to our community. We must acknowledge the significant racialized harm that these stops inflict on our Black and Brown community members, sometimes to the point of death. Today, I am joined by Valerie Castile, the mother of Philando Castile, who was killed during a non-public safety traffic stop in 2016. Philando had been pulled over for a broken taillight on the night he was shot and killed by law enforcement. Before that day, he had been stopped by police at least 49 times in 13 years, often for minor infractions. No one should lose their life as a result of a broken taillight or because they have an item dangling from their rearview mirror. Nor should they be put through the inconvenience, humiliation, and trauma that results from being pulled over and searched as a result of a pretext stop. Our policy aligns with the non-public safety traffic stop provisions that were agreed to by the City of Minneapolis in both the federal and state consent decrees, which Mayor Frey and Chief O'Hara committed to follow earlier this year. And those consent decrees stemmed from extensive investigations and findings of discrimination by both federal and state government. To quote the U.S. Department of Justice investigation materials, from November 1st, 2016 to August 9th, 2022, MPD data showed it stopped but did not cite or arrest Black people at 5.7 times the rate at which it stopped but did not cite or arrest white people, given their shares of the population. This is why the report recommended limiting the use of pretext stops. But this pattern is not unique to Minneapolis, which is why this policy will cover all of Hennepin County. My first year in office, about 2 years ago, at a meeting with all of the Hennepin County chiefs, one of them asked me whether we were going to have a pretext stop policy. I talked about the data and the harm done to the community. And I suggested if their data was different, then they should share it with the rest of us. No one has. As a part of our new policy, we will support additional findings of the consent decree by presumptively not charging cases that directly result from only a consent search during a pedestrian or vehicle stop. A common scenario for a consent search is when an officer pulls over a car and asks the occupant whether they consent to having their property searched. The car, a purse, a backpack, something of that nature. The officer has no legal reason to search, which is why they are asking for consent. So consent searches allow officers to bypass all of the usual investigative steps necessary to establish probable cause and instead search a person or their vehicle solely based on the officer's request. Many people don't feel that they can refuse a consent search because of the power differential or the concern or fear of what might happen if they say no. They are also not an effective tool for public safety. Studies from around the country have established that consent searches are less likely to result in contraband than probable cause searches. And a recent study on the impact of consent searches in 5 states found that there is no discernible relationship between the use of consent searches and crime. As I said earlier, we are focusing on making evidence-informed decisions about what will actually improve public safety in our community. No policy can capture every scenario, so there will be exceptions on a case-by-case basis in circumstances that endanger public safety. As I said, we plan to implement this policy on October 15th, 2025. I look forward to robust input on this policy that is informed by data as well. While this policy is new for Hennepin County, it is not new in Minnesota. Our partners at the Ramsey County Attorney's Office have had a very similar policy in place since 2021. I'm thrilled to have Ramsey County Attorney John Choi here to talk about how well this has worked in his community and the support that Ramsey County law enforcement has brought to this critical work. Ramsey County Attorney John Choi.
Thank you, County Attorney Moriarty. First of all, I just want to commend your courageousness because I believe that leaders consistently do the right thing and they stand for things that are important, justice, equity, and safety. And today, this change is so important because for too long, I think we haven't had this change across our state as well as across this country. And I really believe that what we ought to be doing in terms of the type of policing that is in a community, the type of prosecution, how the courts operate, all of that belongs to the people. And I think we should be talking to the people about and engaging them. And I know that's what County Attorney Moriarty has done in lifting up perspectives that aren't always at that table. For me, I knew this change had to be done, and I started having conversations with my law enforcement leaders back in 2019. Oftentimes, we ask so much of families, of communities of color. They have to have that talk with their loved ones and their family members. And so what society is expecting for too long is that people adapt to whatever the situation is. But I think the situation can change. That we in the system, that we in policing, we in prosecution, we who enforce the law can actually listen to those perspectives, understand them, and seek to make the changes that are necessary to make our community more just and more equitable and more safe. And as County Attorney Moriarty talked about, the data is so clear. I mean, you could just Google this, And you will find studies upon studies going back decades. And so we embarked on that change back in September of 2021. And it was truly the most controversial thing that I did as the leader in Ramsey County as the county attorney. But over time, as we have shown the public the data, to show that truly after the Justice Innovation Lab came in and studied what had happened, public safety was not negatively impacted at all. In fact, the trust that's been built between the participating police agencies and my office with the public is only enhanced. And the stories, I wish that there were chiefs here who could tell you the stories about how grateful people are about getting a notice in the mail instead of having been pulled over, in the assistance that we're providing for people in Ramsey County to get a voucher coupon so that they can get whatever the defective condition is. So for since 21, we've been on that journey. We've shown the research, and the rate of recovery for these guns, especially in St. Paul, that has not decreased. In fact, it's gone up. And everything that we said that we wanted to accomplish when we announced this policy in 2021, it's actually occurred. We said that we have limited time, scarcity. I mean, in Minneapolis, one of the big issues, I'm not sure that there's enough police. And so their time is valuable. And we've got to solve more murders in this town. We've got to solve more non-fatal shootings in this town. And that's where the resources need to be going to. And if we're talking about like driving, the type of driving that really matters to the public, it's like speeding. That kills people. Drunk driving kills people. When you're driving carelessly, you're on the phone, texting, that's what kills people. We should be focused on that type of traffic enforcement and not this type. And then we also said that, and then that's what happened in St. Paul and in Ramsey County. The percentage of moving violations increased, and then the equipment violations, the non-moving violations decreased. Today in St. Paul, over 90% of the traffic enforcement are moving violations. That's the North Star that I think all communities should be trying to get towards. And then, of course, with this policy, it's very, very narrow. But you know, the last time I looked at these numbers was about summer of '24, because we launched some videos, because I expected we'd get some questions about it. And I disclosed to the public about like how many of these cases came in. I think it was about 22 cases that implicated the policy. And then in preparation for today, I looked at the numbers. And guess what? These cases are not being presented to our office anymore. So through some good conversations and change, we're making things better. And the definition of insanity is to do things over and over and expect a different outcome. And so we have to be open to trying new things. We have to be open to listening to all communities. And I just want to commend Mary Moriarty for her leadership in pushing forward this conversation. And my message to all of those who are listening and who live in Hennepin County or work in Hennepin County, this policy actually works. It delivers on a better version of justice, a better version of policing, and a better version of justice for all. So thanks so much.
Valerie Castile.
Good evening, and thank you for all coming out. I wanted to thank Prosecuting Attorney Mary Moriarty and John Choi, because John Choi has been working on this pretextual stop policy for a while now. And I am Philando Castillo's mother, and I don't think that his life should have been lost by this. A 89-cent bulb is why my son was killed. A 89-cent bulb. And to take on creating a policy to address pretextual stops is a huge thing, because as a mother, you know, we have to hold our breaths every time our kids go out the door, knowing that they're getting into a vehicle and driving and not knowing if they'll make it home safe. and just having these pretextual stops not done, then we won't feel that. You know, I am a mother and I love my son, and just having our community come together in order to face the realities of these non-safety traffic stops is ridiculous. I mean, it's something more that the police can be doing, addressing serious public safety hazards instead of just looking at a mechanical issue and pulling over a car, doing a evidence dive. They're looking for something. But I do appreciate them coming up with this pretextual stop policy because it is working. I have talked to several community members that do drive in certain areas, and they have said that they have not been pulled over as much as in previous times. But thank you all for coming out, and I appreciate just working on something for the public because it helps with the trust with police and the community as well. Our police officers, they are in danger as well. We need police. We all know that and we understand that, but we don't need the type of policing that causes harm to our communities. Thank you.
Sorry. Nikema Levy-Armstrong.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Nikema Levy-Armstrong. I'm a civil rights attorney as well as the founder of the Racial Justice Network and the past president of the Minneapolis NAACP. I'm here to stand in solidarity with Mary Moriarty and the Hennepin County Attorney's Office in pushing for this new policy that is long overdue. I recall many years ago working with the ACLU in 2014 when they produced a piece called Picking Up the Pieces that talked about this issue of people of color, particularly young Somali men, who were being pulled over and harassed for no reason by law enforcement. And as Valerie Castile mentioned, I remember the night that Philando was pulled over, and it rocked our community to its core, seeing that a life was unnecessarily taken, and also the fact that this happened in front of a child. And if that officer who pulled over Philando for that little 89-cent bulb that Valerie just talked about had this policy in place, Philando would still be alive today. And his family and our community would have suffered significantly less trauma. We can think about Dante Wright in 2021, same thing, being pulled over for having an air freshener hanging on his mirror. And the ripple effects of these unjustified murders continues to impact our community. As the founder of the Racial Justice Network, we approached then Chief Madeira Arredondo about the issues with equipment violation traffic stops that the Minneapolis Police Department was engaged in. And this was actually brought to our attention through Mary Moriarty as a result of her experience as the Chief Public Defender of Hennepin County and seeing the racial disproportionality of Black people and brown people being consistently pulled over for equipment violation traffic stops. And we have to understand that it's not just the trauma in that moment of having a police officer pull a person over and not knowing what's going to happen, but when people survive those stops, if and when they survive those stops, they are then brought into the criminal justice system, which impacts their ability to provide for their families when they have to take time off to go to court. And then if they are found guilty, they then have a criminal history, and it throws lives and families into turmoil completely unnecessarily. So when we approached Chief Arredondo during the pandemic about this issue, we asked for his data folks to be present, and we spent a year meeting with him to talk about overturning that particular policy of police officers being able to pull people over for equipment violation traffic stops. We asked for a moratorium at that time, and although the chief didn't agree to a moratorium, what he did agree upon was to allow the Minneapolis police officers to give people a fix-it coupon. And that was in collaboration with the local nonprofit that gives people coupons instead of citations when they have an equipment violation issue. So this policy is long overdue. I believe it can save lives. I believe that it will reduce trauma in our community. It will reduce wasting the time of officers who, as folks have said earlier, need to be focused on solving some of the serious crimes and murders that have happened in this community. And it will allow people to breathe a sigh of relief, because some folks have issues with equipment violations because they can't afford to get them fixed. It shouldn't be a criminal justice issue, and it certainly shouldn't be a life or death issue. So I'm here standing in solidarity, and I'm glad that Mary Moriarty and her staff have made this crucial decision for residents of Hennepin County. Thank you.
Questions?
Can you talk about, even if just a ballpark concept, what amount of casework are we talking about? Is this a common type of situation that you see coming to your office, where you have casework that's coming that originated with this kind of law enforcement stuff?
I think the question is this pretty much how many cases do we get? I think it depends on the jurisdiction. We don't see pretext stops in some cities, others we do. It's just dependent on which jurisdiction that you're in. We will be keeping data on this and trying to monitor what kind of stops we see. And our hope is, as County Attorney Choi said, that police will stop these pretext stops, and so we won't see those cases at all.
So my understanding is that this is already the policy in Minneapolis, correct? Does this apply to the suburbs then?
Yeah, so the question is, my understanding is that this is already the policy in Minneapolis. Will this apply to the suburbs? It's actually not the policy in Minneapolis. It was part of the consent decree, actually both the federal and state consent decrees, but it has not been implemented yet. I think we're due to get an update from ELIFA, the monitoring group, at the end of this month. And as you know, both Chief O'Hara and Mayor Fry said, even though the federal consent decree will not be enforced because the federal government withdrew from that, they promised that they will continue to have these policies, what was agreed to in the consent decree. In terms of the rest of law enforcement, which also includes the sheriff, by the way, although I talked about data from Minneapolis, as County Attorney Choi said, the data is pretty consistent all over the country. And so the same reasons that apply to Minneapolis apply to all of the suburbs. It also doesn't make much sense to be a driver and be thinking, well, I can't be stopped by MPD, but I could be stopped by the sheriff, or to drive across to one of the suburbs and not know that you would be subject to being stopped there. So as we know, this has been incredibly successful in Ramsey County. We also know, I think it was Chief Henry of St. Paul who said he was a little reluctant to go into this. He wasn't sure how well it would work. And I've seen him on video talking about how much trust was gained with the community because they were not engaging in these stops anymore.
Can you kind of break down how this might work in practice then? Say Brooklyn Center cop pulls over someone who doesn't have 2 license plates or something, doesn't have their tax current. They ask the driver if they can search. The driver complies, consents. They find a gun. Does that mean you won't charge that, or you'll think twice about charging it? Just kind of break down the process.
Sure. The question was, let's say an officer in Brooklyn Park or any other suburb pulls over someone based on a pretext stop, and they search the car and they find a gun. What happens then? The presumption is that we will not charge it, but we will have an exception. We will be able, just as the policy is in Ramsey County, we will be able to look at the specific circumstances, and if there's a compelling public safety interest there, we may make an exception to the policy and charge it.
Is this going to be just like Ramsey County when you talk about the citations? If someone is not pulled over, they take down license plates and then send them a note, so to speak?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The question is this going to be like the practice, actually, in Ramsey County where police officers don't actually pull somebody over, they take the plate down and a coupon is sent to the driver to get those repairs. So right now, I've had extensive conversations with County Attorney Choi about that. We, and as Nikema Levy-Armstrong mentioned, Minneapolis does have those coupons. The issue with that is that you actually have to pull the person over to hand them the coupon. And so the idea is to avoid that contact between community and police. We do not yet have that set up here, but we have already started the process of looking into how we can do that, because that's the best practice.
Two questions.
Obviously, there's in the consent decree for Minneapolis a way to monitor if these types of stops are lowering over time. How is that going to be implemented in the suburbs and elsewhere, just to keep the accountability there?
So the question is about, because of the consent decree, there is a monitoring agency that's going to look at these types of stops in Minneapolis. How will that be implemented? How will accountability happen for suburban communities? And the answer is, I don't know yet. We can certainly monitor what we get and why, but unless those particular agencies are keeping their data and share that, we're really not going to know. And I guess I would say that's probably something for chiefs, for mayors, for city council members, and community to talk about in each of their cities about what kind of data they want and what kind of accountability they would like.
What would an exception look like?
What was that?
What would an exception look like?
So question is, what would an exception look like? There's one I can think of off the top of my head that actually I think happened in one of the suburbs here. There was a stop, there was a gun discovered, and the ballistics matched that gun to a shooting that happened in Minneapolis. So that might be an example of an exception. It's hard, as I said, to list every possible reason there could be an exception. We will look at that on a case-by-case basis, but that is one example. Thank you.
It's wonderful. It's so great to see you too. I know. It's going on 10 years.